Hello, 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 and welcome everyone to my Facebook Live. My name is Felicia, and I am the owner and founder of She Fire Fitness, the compassionate coach, helping prime time women move with power and purpose throughout life. Today is my March 25th edition of my Facebook Live, my noon Facebook Live, which I do every week. So I'm so glad to have you here. So, I'm going to just jump right in. If you are listening to this outside of the group, if you're not in the Girl Get Your Sexy Back group, I want you to get right on over to Facebook and just do a search for Girl Get Your Sexy Back and come on in so that you don't miss any great information, tools, resources, support to help you on your fitness journey. Okay, so our theme for this month is creating healthier habits. And our focus in the Facebook group to support that theme for this week has been the healthy habit of self talk. I posted a question in the Facebook group a couple of days ago about what is a default thought that you would like to change. And I appreciate those that gave a comment. I'm going to go through some remarks on this topic, and at the end, I want you to stay to the end so that you can see what I want to share about those comments. And if you have any comments while you're listening, just go ahead and put them in the chat box, and I would be glad to address those. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the meat of the topic today. You may recall that we've been talking about mindfulness. So, this is right along the lines of mindfulness and mindset, which is so critical as it relates to us starting our fitness journey and sustaining it. So, there's something that we want to be aware of in terms of there are 7 qualities we talked about, and I won't go through all of those now, but one is to be non-judgmental. Let's see, what else did I want to share? To be accepting, to just kind of be okay where you are, but be open to changing. Now, for all of us Bible scholars and Jesus gals out there, of which I am one, I want to point out a couple of scriptures that are really tied in with what we're talking about. And one is Proverbs 23:7, which states that as a man or woman thinketh in her heart, so is she. So it's so important that we have thoughts that line up with God's word. And also 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 5 through 7, it states that, gosh, I had it in my mind just before we started. I got it now. Casting down imaginations and every high thought that exalts itself against the knowledge of God and bringing into obedience those thoughts. So sometimes thoughts come in and out of our mind and they're not aligned with how God sees us. And we want to be aware of that. We want to cast those down and reject them. Okay, a caveat before I get into the meat of what I'm sharing. We will be talking about thoughts and trying to change those thoughts, but I do want to admonish you if you are having a very dark, heavyweight thoughts, self-talk that could potentially lead to you hurting yourself or hurting somebody else, then I urge you to get professional help, because what we're talking about today is more, I would say, kind of lightweight, medium weight thoughts. But if you're in a really state of deep depression, darkness, then I urge you to get help with that. So let's go ahead, get into the meat of what we want to talk about today. What is negative self-talk? Let's talk about that. Let's get a working definition. You may have heard the term monkey mind, and that speaks to this endless barrage of thoughts that just kind of go in and out of our mind just all day long, that we really can't control per se, or we maybe don't try to control them. Just an endless stream of thoughts, and it's called the monkey mind. My working definition that I'm going to be using to kind of undergird some things that I'll be saying today is, in terms of what is negative self-talk, is anything that casts doubt on your adequacy as a human being and your ability to cope with life. So that's my working definition. So we'll just use that as a framework. But if you have another definition, put it in the chat. I would love to hear it. So we've got a definition that we're going to be working from. Let's talk about why we should change negative self-talk to positive self-talk. I am going to reference an article that I saw from the Mayo Clinic, and I'll also put it in the chat below so y'all can refer to it. But the research shows that there are several benefits of positive thinking and optimism on our health. Let me kind of go through some of these because maybe it would inspire you. One is an increased lifespan. And if you think about any time you see a report about a person that's lived to be 100 years old or what have you, they are generally very positive and just you can just hear it in terms of the words. A lot of times they're believers, but they just tend to be very positive people. So that's one benefit. The second benefit, mental benefits, have been observed, or research shows that there's lower rates of depression, distress. There's better psychological well-being. There are physical benefits that come from positive thinking, positive self-talk. Improved cardiovascular health, that's our heart. Reduced death risk from cardiovascular disease, and resistance to the common cold. So that kind of speaks to our immunity. Here's a point that I wanted to share from the article that I read, is that positive/optimistic people tend to have a healthier lifestyle in terms of movement, diet, etc. Although the research is not clear in terms of what comes first. Are positive people healthy? Are positive people healthy, or are healthy people positive people? It's like, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? The research is not conclusive on that, but there does seem to be an interrelationship, so that's something for us to be aware of. So hopefully you're bought into why we want to change our negative self-talk to positive self-talk by thinking through some of those benefits. Let's talk about how we would go about doing that. First of all, we want to identify our negative self-thought. And that comes from applying that attitude of mindfulness that we've been talking about. And I encourage you to go back and look at a prior Facebook Live. I think it was from a couple of weeks ago, and I'll put it in the chat box, or you could do a search on it and look at what we said about mindfulness. In particular, the qualities of non-judgment and acceptance. Now, there are some forms of negative self-talk that I want to go over quickly, and there are 4 of them. There's filtering, there's personalizing, catastrophizing, and polarizing. So let me just talk about those really quickly. Filtering is when you magnify the negative aspects of a situation and you filter out all the positive ones. Personalizing is when, if anything bad that happens, you immediately take it on as yourself, as this is about me, this is my fault, which is not necessarily the case. Catastrophizing, can't really say that word, but it's when you make a catastrophe of everything. You automatically anticipate the worst. And I kind of think of, from Saturday Night Live, there's a character called Debbie Downer. So that kind of is what makes me think, what I think about in terms of always thinking catastrophically about everything. The 4th area of negative self-talk is polarization. You see only things as either good or bad. There's no middle ground. When I put all of those together, what it makes me think of is what we often hear termed a drama queen. You know, that somebody that just makes a really big deal out of everything. And everything's not a big deal. Some things are, some things are not. So that's something to be aware of. Okay, so those are common forms of negative self-talk. we want to, I'm going to give you some examples of negative self-talk. And again, I'm going to do a more extensive article on this because I never want these Facebook Lives to be really, really long and drawn out. But let me give you a few examples of negative self-talk from this article. And I'm going to give you a statement that's negative self-talk and then a way to flip it to something that's positive. I've never done it before. A way to flip that is to say it's an opportunity to learn something new. Another example is there's no way it will work. That's the negative self-talk. The flip to that is I can try to make it work. Another example, I'm not going to get any better at this. And maybe that's from a fitness standpoint. But a flip side to that, to make it positive, I'll give it another try. Okay, so those are some examples. So we talked about identifying our negative self-talk. Let's talk about creating a new habit of positive self-talk. And what I want you to do, your takeaway from this Facebook Live today is I want you to identify an area of change, one aspect of your life where you have those negative self-talk. I can give you an example real quickly from my standpoint. Something that I'm always saying is, my kitchen floor is always dirty, or I can't keep my kitchen floor clean. Now, I live in a household with 3 other adults, 3 males, one of which is my husband. And as I thought about this negative self-talk, because it really makes me feel like I'm inadequate, and I'm personalizing it because I say mine. I'm like, why is it my kitchen floor? It's everybody's kitchen floor. So I thought maybe one way to flip that is to say the kitchen floor is clean enough. And I've taken myself out of the equation and I've not made it such, I've not polarized it so much. So I hope that makes sense to you guys. And again, I love to see your comments. So I'm kind of checking and see if I see any comments. Okay, so another thing that you could do, I want to encourage you to do once you identify that thought, journal. We talked about journaling at the beginning of the year. Journal your negative thoughts and identify how you can change it into a positive thought, just like I just did. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of wrap up because again I want to keep these kind of short, but I want to in closing address some comments that came up when I asked that question about default thoughts that people have that they want to change. One person said, Evelyn says, one default thought that she has is that I'm tired. Okay, so let's talk about that. A way to flip that instead of saying I'm tired is that my body needs blank right now. And to kind of be mindful and think about what is it that my body needs. Maybe the default is, I'm tired, but maybe you can be more specific about what your body needs. Maybe my body needs water right now. Maybe my body needs movement right now. Maybe my body needs rest right now. So again, applying that concept of mindfulness and thinking through what is it that I really need that's causing me to just immediately go to I'm tired. Okay, so that's one example. Another example is Eileen said in response to that default thought that she would like to change, I'll do it later. So let's delve into that a little bit. I'll do it later. On the surface, and we're not judging, it's not a bad thought, but what is it implying? If it has to do perhaps with a promise that she's made to herself about, say, exercising or fitness, then she is not keeping that promise to herself, which could lead her to, in the back of her mind subconsciously, having feelings of inadequacy. So we want to flip that. And again, I'm just kind of reading through on the surface what that has to do with, and because this is about fitness, that's what I'm jumping to. But I'll do it later. Maybe I'll do an exercise snack. We've talked about that. Maybe I'll do some stretches instead of saying I'll do it later. But again, it has to do with sort of what the intent is to that statement. So I know I went through that pretty quickly. I'm going to wrap up, and I'd love to hear you guys' comments. But remember, anytime you're trying to create a new habit, you want to be patient, you want to be gentle with yourself, and you want to be encouraging with yourself. Have grace. Don't say anything to yourself that you wouldn't say to a friend. So, ladies, I hope you have a lovely weekend. I want you to join in the conversation. I love it when you give me comments and you respond to any of those questions that I have, because it helps me hopefully to address issues better that you are facing in your life. So, again, if you're not in the Girl Get Your Sexy Back group, come on over. We'd love to have you involved. And I hope everyone has a lovely, lovely weekend, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.